you're in the same unit, taxonomy, just moving on to another area. So thus far we talked about general taxonomy, then we moved into archaea briefly, bacteria briefly, a big part about protists, then fungi. 2 kingdoms left for us to discuss, plants and then animals. Okay, and then we'll be ready to move on. So we're going to briefly talk about some of the characteristics of plants today, and we'll continue on tomorrow. So I know you guys have studied plants a little bit in the past.
This would be on like the
Yes.
mushrooms and
No.
just
Plants. Then you're done. So you guys know the characteristics of plants. Give me the words we would use to describe plants in general. Three main terms. We're thinking about the kingdoms. Brian, which one? Multicellular, eukaryotic, and autotrophs. Okay. So plants are multicellular, made in many cells. Plants are also autotrophic. They can make their own food in the form of glucose. Through what process? Which happens in what organelle? And in this microscope image of some cells, we can obviously cell wall. Within it, all these green circles are the chloroplasts. So they're eukaryotic. They have a nucleus. So they have a nuclear membrane surrounding the DNA. They have other organelles, mitochondria, chloroplasts, and so forth. So they're eukaryotic cells, complex cells. How about reproduction? What type of reproduction do plants have? Right? They are sometimes. Well, plants also reproduce sexually. And we're going to talk about that in the next few days. So, if we further break down the classification of plants, there's sort of 2 broad groups of plants. Vascular and non-vascular plants. So I have up here an example of each. What is this?
Moss.
This is moss. Anyone know what this is? It's a geranium. Geranium. All right. So these are an example of each type of plant. So there are vascular plants and non. Do you know what the word vascular means?
Like, I think vessels.
Vessels. What is a vessel? Hollow, a tube, okay, a duct that can transport things. Like our blood vessels, our arteries, veins, and capillaries, transports blood through our body. Okay? So vascular plants have special tubes, which we would call vessels, that carry water and other materials from one part of the plant to another. And vascular plants have those bundles. Non-vascular plants, they don't have these vessels for transporting water around. So if you think about things like mosses versus this geranium, what's different in their growth? Sylvia?
Well, like the moss spreads like outward, and then the geranium goes like upward.
Yeah. Moss, as you know, we've seen, grows low along the ground. Do you ever see moss growing in a bush form or a tree form? Why not? Now you know why. Or you should piece together why, Aiden?
Because like it doesn't need all of the water to stand straight up, like to have a stiff stem.
Well, Well, it still needs the water, Joey.
Do they get their food from the ground? They need to stay.
Well, they get their food through photosynthesis. Sure, I think you just misspoke to me. Dean?
Their roots just go, wait, they can't, because they don't have the vessels, they can't grow upward, so they just have the moss part that is visible, then they have just their roots that get the water.
Yeah. So, yeah, there's no way, so for the non-vascular plants, they're low growing and relatively small because the roots have to feed the water directly into the other parts of the plant. Whereas something like a Pinus strobus out there, or this geranium plant, where does it get its water? From the roots in the soil, but it then has these vessels to carry that water up to these leaves up here. Whereas the moss would have no way of getting the water to that level. So vascular plants can be larger, taller than non-vascular plants. So moss is probably the thing you're most familiar with in terms of a non-vascular plant, mosses. There are some other things you may not be familiar with. But again, they're all sort of small, low-growing plants that grow in damp, wet areas because they need to be close to the water. Sometimes. There's different types of liverworts and stuff. So these vessels that we're talking about in vascular plants, there's two types of these vessels. They're called the xylem and the phloem. You guys ever learn those terms? Okay. So vascular plants have these tubes that transport water, like we said, but other things as well. So the term vascular means vessels or ducts or tubes for transport. And so vascular plants have these little pipelines, these tubes in the plant to transport material around. There's the xylem and the phloem. One transports basically water and minerals from the roots. The other transports sugars and things. The way I help people remember it, what letter immediately comes before X? No. W. The letter W comes right before the letter X. It transports water. Then you're not accelerated in English. So the xylem transports water. Generally, it's from the roots where water is absorbed from the soil up to the other parts of the plant. When we look at a cross-section of a stem, the xylem is the inner part of the plant. The phloem is what's responsible for transporting sugars. Where are sugars made in a plant? Pardon?
In the roots.
No? Making sugar?
The leaves.
In the leaves. That's what photosynthesis does. Makes sugar, makes glucose. And so in this plant, sugar is made in these leaves. When the other parts of the plant, the roots or the stem, need energy, that sugar needs to be transported to those other parts, and that sugar goes through the phloem. To help people remember, what delicious golden liquid do we pour on our pancakes that comes from plants? Syrup. Ends with a P. Phloem starts with a P. Sugar, syrup, phloem, carry sugar. So again, just last slide here to reiterate. The xylem brings water from the roots up. Phloem brings sugar to other parts of the plant. All right, we'll stop there for today. Continue tomorrow. I have some papers to give back to you. Oh, I'll give them here tomorrow. I have your labs back, but I'll give them to you tomorrow.